Welcome back to the Open Up podcast, everyone, and to episode 40 with Toni Versic, the motivational speaker and coach behind the widely popular online movement, Tonibody. My man, thank you for being here. It's been a while.
Thank you for having me, brother. I'm excited to have a chat.
Yeah, I'm excited to have a chat about mental health. Obviously, you're known for being the dude that helps people get shredded, but you're aiming to take a different route, and I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for the people that you're going to help moving forward. But straight off the bat, how would you describe yourself as a human, and how would you describe the services you provide at the moment?
That's a loaded question, bro. As a human, man, I'm just a guy, a bag of flesh, rolling through life, trying to live the best life I can, man. Like what we do, the company Tonibody, it's bred from my pain, my struggle, my anxiety, my depression, and also on the flip side, my triumphs and my wins and my happiness. And these are feelings we all experience. And, you know, we've got a team of 138 clients now. We've had 30,000 people through our challenges. And we don't help people get shredded. We help them improve the key three of body, mind, and love. So, you know, when you've got a healthy, lean, athletic body, well, then you feel better. You know, the chemicals running through your body are very different. You're more happy, you're more fulfilled. And then the ultimate purpose of what I do now is love. Sounds really cheesy because I work with mostly men, but love for yourself, looking in the mirror and being happy with who you are and how you are. And then when you do that, you can give and receive your best version. A lot of the people we work with, man, can't say they can do that just yet. And there's no greater feeling than giving and receiving love.
Yeah, well, not being able to love yourself, I guess, leaves you with a feeling that you're not enough. And if you feel like you're not enough, you're going to try and validate yourself or your ego by getting attention or, you know, acting out, shit like that. So it's super powerful what you offer. And I'm stoked that someone like you is doing that, knowing what you've been through, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's a lot of guys doing it, and it's changing a lot in the industry. Like the whole fitness industry as a whole is moving towards a better position. It's just taking a bit longer than we'd like.
It's awesome, man. You want to give us a quick summary or breakdown of your childhood and the family dynamics?
Yeah, bro, absolutely. So I was actually born in Croatia in 1991. So I'm 27 years old now.
Shit.
And well, my parents moved to New Zealand when I was 4. And as soon as we moved over, they split up. So I didn't really have my dad around much. You know, when we did see him, he was drinking a lot. And he doesn't like me talking about this, but he fucking did it. So, you know, he used to drink a lot and I didn't really have that father figure around. And he did his best. We'd see him every third weekend, but sometimes, you know, he couldn't pick us up because he was wasted in the middle of the day. And that was one of his coping mechanisms for losing my mother. And then my mother didn't want us to have anything to do with him. So we saw him sporadically, and it was that sort of environment where you go to see that parent you're not living with and you just watch movies and eat junk food. And I love that aspect of it. But looking back, I realized that I didn't really learn. I didn't have a ritual elder. I didn't have a mentor to guide me into becoming a man. So, you know, growing up, especially being a foreigner, English is my second language, I didn't really have much confidence, and I didn't really have anyone to teach me how to have confidence. So my solution through primary and intermediate school was to be that show-off kid that, you know, did silly things like trying to do a backflip in front of a chick to make her laugh and then hurting himself. And this in turn would cause way more embarrassment, and it traveled deeply into my teenage years. That's when I started getting bullied. You know, I was very fortunate because my mother let me do whatever I want, whenever I want. She was very, very open about that. And it was hard for her being a single mother, you know, with 2 boys. But I started getting bullied around intermediate school. And I already had low confidence. I don't know where it came from. I just had this sense of low confidence, probably from early childhood. I'm not sure where. And then when I started getting bullied, that really took a knock. So I remember as a teenager, I'd come home and look in the mirror and I'd like punch myself or I'd slap myself. I'd tell myself how ugly I was. I had buck teeth, and I'd always look at the things that were wrong with me, the imperfections.
Well, it's hard not to, right? When someone's telling you there's something wrong with you, especially if you hadn't
100%.
realized it before.
100%. And I think I did realize that it was reinforced, and I started to believe it. And then in high school, I actually started hanging out with, which I assume were the cooler kids, the guys who sold drugs or drank or partied.
Yeah.
And I somehow got in. I don't know how that happened. I was in the top class at school, so I don't know how I got on with the cool kids. But and I started off hanging out with them as the guy who sober drives and is sort of straight edge. And very quickly that changed for me into escapism. And I think at 15 years old or 14 years old, I started taking drugs and drinking. And, you know, we all do these things when we're experimenting as teenagers, but I took experimenting to the next level. Lines, smoking weed, smoking cigarettes, drinking. And I started getting quite addicted to substances to escape from reality.
Yeah.
Because reality for me was a scary place, and reality for me was not a happy place. So this sort of was fun for a little while. And it was fun up until it wasn't, when I had my first panic attack.
Yeah.
And that was probably the day my life changed so drastically, because it was...
Brother, hold on. I think I just want to go back before we get into your first panic, because obviously first share. In terms of like your masking, I guess fitting in with the cool kids, that feeling of not being enough, like we were speaking about before, and having to like find some way to validate yourself. Looking back now, do you see where your value was, or like what you thought your value was to the people around you?
I haven't actually looked too deep into my past. I'm more so think about where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm extremely grateful for the pain. But like I said, like when I was trying to validate myself with the drinking and the people I was hanging out with, I'd go out with them and I'd drink, and that was the escape. But the escape was actually the trap. And I'd come home and I'd cry like a 16-year-old boy, 15-year-old boy, crying in bed with voice in my head telling me how useless I am or how ugly I am. And, you know, this voice that I had, which was just my subconscious mind, it wasn't an external thing. It was just me, another version of me. I paid a lot of attention to it. And looking back, I can definitely see my value. Every single one of us, no matter how fucked up we truly are, whether we're getting bullied or not, we all have imperfections. And I can laugh about it looking back.
Yeah.
A lot of us can't, you know, a lot of people in those shoes can't.
Yeah. Apart from, like you said, I think you said you had buck teeth, but looking back now at people bullying you, do you think it was because they were trying to fit in, jealousy? Like, was it warranted at all, that bullying?
I don't think it ever is. And it happened again today with some guys. They literally spent 20 minutes commenting on one of my viral videos, just following me around, like writing down shit. And I just commented saying, have a great week. And I wish I had as much time as you guys. Have a great week. And they just kept following, so I blocked them. And then I just laughed about it, because back then and now, anyone who's taking time out of their day to put others down is hurting themselves. Only hurt people hurt people. It's physically impossible to be feeling amazing and feeling grateful for life and putting other people down.
Yeah.
So jealousy is just another manifestation of hurt. Looking back, I know the guy. He actually apologized a few years later, and I haven't heard from him in years. However, I know that he didn't do it. At that age, you don't do it unless you're like the 0.0001% who genuinely want to hurt people. They end up being serial killers. Everyone else, bro, they're just hurting. And that's their way of feeling a bit better in life, because sometimes we feel low.
Yeah, exactly. It's powerful, but the most powerful, I think, takeaway from what you just said is the fact that you responded with love instead of reciprocating that negativity or that toxicity that people were giving you on your viral video, which is something that people need to take note of, I think, especially in today's world with social media.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it's very easy. Like, this is a topic I wanted to talk about today. It's very easy for somebody behind a keyboard without a face to write whatever they want. And they're not doing it. A lot of the time, they're not doing it to hurt you. They're doing it to make themselves feel better. They're not doing it to be malicious. And they would never say it to your face. But we live in a day and age of notifications, brother, and we put a lot of value behind this flashing dot and these characters.
Exactly.
And this is a big part of why a lot of us are suffering these days. And it's a very easy fix.
Yeah, well, I had one of my friends that I've interviewed, Thomas Marlowe. He writes for the Western Australian. He wrote an article about like my story, but then sort of spun it so that it was more to do with FIFO and FIFO taking the weight of my depression and my suicide attempt. And bro, I got a lot of flack. I'm going to be honest. I got people telling me to kill myself. You're a pussy, man. You're a faggot. Kill yourself. You should have killed yourself. Yep. And honestly, if I was in a darker place, if I wasn't so content with my life, I'd probably be forced to like go down that route. But since I'm so comfortable in myself, I feel like I'm enough. I can just look at them and say, hey, like you are hurting. Like you said, you're hurting. You're taking it out on me. That's okay. I don't mind it. I'm just going to show you love because you need it.
Well, that's a very enlightened thing to think and say. However, like you say, when you're in that position, especially of depression, where it's pervasive, personal, and permanent, then there's not really much of a chance of thinking like that.
Exactly.
And a lot of these men or women who are saying things like that on the internet, they don't truly mean it, but they don't realize the weight it might have for someone who's in pain.
Yeah, man.
You know, there's a lot of weight behind that. It's a very loaded thing to say.
Exactly. And I think we feel because it is social media, because it is just characters on a platform rather than us in person, that it doesn't hold the same weight as it would if we were to say it in person.
100%. And we wouldn't ever say it in person. Like, I've never heard anyone say that of the 27 years I've been here. And, you know, of the 7.5 billion people on the planet, bro, there's not one that walks in each other's shoes. No one understands what goes through anyone's head except you.
Exactly.
So, you know, without that knowledge of what's going through someone's head, you can throw abuse without considering the consequence.
Yeah. Okay. I think I've taken you off on enough of a tangent. Did you want to run us through your first panic attack?
Yeah, bro. So it was my first time traveling. I think I was 16 or 17. I forget. I think I was 16. And I went to the UK and met up with some of those cool kid friends. Shout out to those guys. And we went to Fabric nightclub and partied and took all of the drugs. And the next day he had to go to work. And I went to lunch with his girlfriend, who we were friends, but not super tight. And I was in a foreign country having lunch with this girl. She's a beautiful girl. And I just felt my chest tighten, like my entire chest just tightened. And I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. So I started freaking out. My adrenaline spiked. My skin started tingling. My hands and feet got clammy. I felt like I was in tunnel vision and distant from my body. And the only way I can explain it was I felt like I was going to die. And it lasted about 5 to 10 minutes, and I can still vividly remember it. It's a big part of my anxiety today is relating to that 16-year-old me, which I need to give back sometimes. And the only cure for me was she couldn't understand what was going on, neither could I. And I said, I need to go home. And I went straight to sleep, and that was the only thing that helped it. And throughout my month and a half abroad, I went back to Croatia and kept partying. For me, it was funny because when I drank, that would calm the anxiety. But as soon as I woke up, it was back. So it was like, again, that escape was actually a trap. In my head, I made the association that if I drink, it will calm me, but it was causing more and more issues. So I went on this roller coaster of drinking and drugs when I got back to New Zealand. And that lasted a good 2 or 3 years, man, like 3-day benders. And I never that the drugs and alcohol will make things worse.
Yeah.
You know?
Shit, man. That's powerful. Hell, I guess, actually, you can move forward before I ask any more questions. You can keep going from there.
Yeah, so after that, I went and got help. I went to a doctor because I didn't know what was going on. I still had no idea what anxiety was at this point. I think we're slowly getting to a point in the world where there's more on social media. There's the good side to it, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't understand what it was. So I went to a doctor, and it was so funny because this doctor didn't ask me anything other than, you know, how you feeling? He said, oh yeah, that's anxiety. And he put me on medication. He didn't ask me if I was exercising. He didn't ask me what I was eating. He didn't ask me if there was anything happening at home. He didn't ask if I drank or smoked. He put me on medication, and that medication was good. He said, take one of these a day for 7 days. I took all of them in one day. So I came back for more. Luckily, this guy wasn't as stupid to put me on more. He didn't let me take any more. But I went through the stage of like, I think it was 2 years of just chronic anxiety. And there was a period of 30 days where I didn't leave my house. I just binge watched Game of Thrones. It was the first season, I think, that came out. And I was scared to leave my house and leave my home. The only time I did leave was in the nighttime. And then I'd come home at like 3, 4 in the morning. My parents didn't know I was living with them because I had to move back home. They know now. Like, I'm very honest with them. My mom says, "Oh, Tony," but yeah. So it was pretty tough. And then my mate Mark Whitlow, he asked me one day to come to the gym with him, and I'd never done anything like that. I'd always been sporty, but I'd never lifted any weights. And I still remember the first weight session. I felt normal again. I felt normal for the first time in so long, and that's when I started getting addicted to exercise and working out. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing like neck exercises because I was self-conscious about my skinny neck. And that was something I got bullied about. But that was the sort of like pivot point where things started to change for me.
That's awesome, bro. Like obviously, it's hard for me to picture you not being someone who's using a gym or exercising because of, how you're perceived on social media at the moment. You're just this constantly shredded, beautiful hunk of man meat.
All my photos are like 2 years old, bro.
Say that on this.
No. Those are the good ones. But no.
Did you find any? Do you feel like you started building your identity around that as another form of escapism to begin with, or did you just enjoy the process?
Well, again, I wasn't at a level of emotional intelligence to realize that was stopping the anxiety. It just felt good. Whereas now I have a lot more scientific and I have a lot more knowledge behind why that helps with things like anxiety and depression. But at the time, it just felt good. So I did more of it. You do things that feel good. You don't think about doing them, you just do them. So drinking is one of them. You don't think about it. You just pick up the bottle because it feels good. And that for me was like a passing of the torch. I still drank, but I felt good when I moved. I felt the same feeling as when I take drugs, just not as intense. And it became something I enjoyed. And then another friend of mine, Karen, said, "Bro, why don't you become a personal trainer?" And when you hear something and a light bulb just goes off?
Yep.
That was the moment for me where a light bulb went off. And the next week I was in this 2-year course and I've never looked back. I finished that 2-year course in 3 months, so I could go work on a cruise ship and travel.
It's awesome, man.
And when I latched onto that, the anxiety actually disappeared for about a year and a half. I didn't feel any anxiety, at least not the same form of anxiety that had been plaguing me for so long. Like I'd forgotten what it was like not to experience crippling fear of the unknown. And that period of 3 months of studying and then the 9 months that I was on a cruise ship, there was not a moment where I felt anxious, even when I drank. I couldn't take drugs. Man. I was on a cruise ship, but it was quite insane, and I put it down to the fact that I was so committed to a goal.
Yeah. So with your anxiety, for anyone who's listening or watching right now who doesn't really have a clear understanding of anxiety, obviously it differs from person to person. But for you, what was your experience and what was the thought process that you'd go through when you have an anxiety attack?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, anxiety in a nutshell, regardless of the form you feel, is fear of something in the future, often catastrophizing the worst case scenario. So my anxiety has always been based around health. I still to this day sometimes, but in the past, we would be having a conversation and I couldn't look you in the eyes because in my head, I was imagining my brain exploding or my heart exploding. Now, to you and I, or to any rational human being, that sounds quite out there. but it was so firmly ingrained in me. And it was a catastrophic scenario that might happen. I might have a stroke, but the chances are pretty low. But that's what anxiety is. You know, it could be public speaking. It could be death. It could be asking a girl out, whatever. It's worst case scenario catastrophizing.
Okay.
So, you know, you can't experience anxiety when you're in the present.
Yeah. So how do you have an understanding of where that particular form of catastrophizing spawned from for you? It's a pretty odd one to imagine that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think there's two things. I mean, I've always been afraid of death. I believe in something. I don't know what that something is. I believe in something up there.
Yeah.
But I also believe that my consciousness disappears when I'm gone, and that scares me because I love living so much, even the painful parts. So that's not a very empowering belief. Secondly, that first panic attack, there was a neural link there between that immense amount of fear and clearly the trauma experienced from it that I've been carrying throughout my life for the last 9 years, 11 years. So every time I experience the clamming hands, that's part of the process of I'm going to go back to that. Okay. And that's been a big learning curve for me, letting that go, letting that trauma go, because it was quite a traumatic experience.
That's actually what I was going to ask you next is, how do you go about letting that go? Because you probably read Dr. Joe Dispenza or you know, watched one of his videos, and he talks about the link between emotion and a memory creating a feeling in the present. How do you go about remedying that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a number of things. That the body is the mind and the mind is the body. So, you know, I've been meditating for the last year consistently. I've created my own type of breath work, you know, that helps with breakthroughs. However, it's also been physical and releasing the tension, because a lot of that tension is very deeply ingrained in my physiology. So there's two ways, is meditation, and the second one, mindfulness, and the second one is physical movement. And if I'm consistently on top of those things, I'm consistently releasing things, you know? Yeah. And also taking the lessons, you know, we hold on to things for a reason. Our brain is stupid. You know, it doesn't hold on to struggle or anxiety for no reason. It's doing it to teach you something. It's doing it to get you to change something. So how I release it is I learn from it, you know, but I still get it. And I know that it's not because I'm holding on to a memory. I'm getting anxiety because it's telling me to change something.
Okay. For you, when you talk about releasing it, like obviously people listening, they could be going through anything, whether it's anxiety or depression, a breakup, heartbreak. Like getting to that point, how do you actually get there? Is it through that mindfulness, meditation, and exercise, or is there something else?
That's a really good question. There is a process to doing anxiety. There's a process to doing depression. There are things we do. So a big problem right now, and this is just my opinion, and I think it's a more empowering opinion for those who choose to take it on board, is that there is something called a black dog. Now, if you put a black dog as something that's got hold of you, it's external, which means it's completely out of your control, which means you have no power to overcome it. Whereas if it's something you do, for example, you physically cannot be depressed if you are looking above the horizon, you are breathing deep, and you put a massive smile on your face and you stand up really tall. Anyone listening or watching right now, stand as tall as you can, smile as wide as you can, look up to the horizon, and try and think of a depressing thought. You can't do it. You can't. If you're doing that properly, if you're doing it half-assed, you'll feel depressed. There's physiology in depression. There's physiology in anxiety. So we have to change our physiology. That is 100% necessary, because there are certain physical states we can get into where you can't do depression or anxiety. And then it's also about setting some solid fucking goals about who we want to become and why we want to become that person. If you're so focused on the gratitude in your life and who you will become, you don't have time to be depressed or anxious. Yep. When I feel anxious these days, it's because I don't have a goal or because I'm not working towards something.
Yeah, or because you know that you should be working towards something and you're procrastinating.
Yeah, and should's a dangerous word, bro. The only things we should do in life are breathe and drink water. Every other should is completely fabricated.
Sorry,
And a
brother,
lot of
you,
my anxiety does
cut
come from
out just
shoulds,
there.
and then I have to. I was saying, so only things we should do are drink water and breathe. Every other should is a fabrication. So a lot of my stress, yes, comes from I should be doing this, and then I go, wait a minute, when did I decide that? A
Yeah.
lot of people's stress comes from their shoulds, and shoulds are dangerous sometimes, brother.
It's awesome, man. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so one other thing I wanted to touch on before we continue with your story is we talk about you set yourself this goal, so you start working hard towards it, and you complete what's meant to be completed in 2 years within 3 months.
Yeah.
Is that something that was bred into you with your mum, or is this something that you had to learn to feel like you were going to break out of that pattern with the drugs and alcohol?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because I stopped at that point drinking and taking drugs so I could study. And it was this firm belief. You mean our beliefs dictate our actions in our life. I had that light bulb go off that I talked about, and I just had certainty because I was so passionate about this idea of, hey, this made me feel better. I can share it with the world. And I just went all in on it. And we all have moments where we do this. You know, when we go all in on addiction or depression or anxiety, that proves we had the skills to go all in on something. You know, so I just took those skills I had for catastrophizing, causing pain to myself, and I just used those exact same skill sets in something that was beneficial to me. And that's how I sped up the process. Passion, excitement, you know?
Yeah. So do you feel like that passion, excitement, that was because you felt you could provide value to others as well?
Yes, 100%. 100%. And I've come to realize a lot of it was significance. For me, it was very selfish. You know, I get a ton of fulfillment from the client who tells me that they beat suicide, or from the person who, after, 20 years of psychologists, they do one session and say, wow, that was better than 20 years. And all I'm doing is sharing my experiences. Wow. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was what I was striving towards, was this idea of I can help people with what I've learned that's helped me. I can share that. Why would I not want to do that?
Yeah. That's the best form of fulfillment, though, brother. Like, you're
Yeah.
sharing your experience, you're sending out those that sort of vibration to others, you're helping them achieve what they want to achieve. Then they're reciprocating that to you, and obviously them sending that out to you, they're going to attract that back themselves from others. So, more power
100%.
to you, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
100%, bro.
Feel free to walk us through the rest of your story from there, my man. I think we're on the cruise ship.
Yeah, so that was a crazy experience. Thought I had fallen in love. It turned out I hadn't. And that was a messy thing. And so I got back to New Zealand after 9 months, and it was a great experience, a very challenging experience, but no anxiety. And then I got back to New Zealand and broke up with the partner who I thought I'd fallen in love with, because I found another girl who was from the UK. And I'm a lover. Like, I truly believe the purpose of us being on the planet is to love. A lot of people think that's cheesy. Anyone who thinks it's cheesy is not being honest with themselves. There is no greater feeling than feeling loved and giving someone love and seeing their face light up. So I fell hard. I literally did the whole love at first sight thing with this woman. And after a few weeks, we went to Sydney and traveled here for New Year's. And we got back, this is like 3 weeks in, I think. And she said, hey, I'm moving to Sydney. So I said, hey, I'm coming with you. And I followed her over here and started a new life. And we spent 2.5 years together. And I thought I was going to marry this girl. You know, she had a lot of unhealthy habits. The habits that I hadn't felt anxiety and depression for a while because I hadn't been drinking. I hadn't been taking drugs. And I met this girl and she liked all of those things.
Okay.
So I started being a part of that. And then I was going to propose to her. I hadn't bought the ring, but I was planning on doing it a week after this happened. And she'd spend nights out, wouldn't tell me where she was. So I didn't suspect anything. I was naive. I was in love. Love blinded me. And she came home one day after me not knowing where she was. It was really late. And she just sat on the couch, looked me dead in the eye, and just went, I don't love you anymore. And, you know, I was planning kids. I had my entire life planned. I could visualize. I was so happy. I could visualize my kids and my grandkids and my dream home and everything. And this was a week before one of my best mate DJ's wedding. We both know DJ, and I was the best man at this wedding, and she wasn't coming anymore. And she told me that, and I had to go to this wedding and be the MC, and I was fucked. And for the 3 months up, we broke up right after I got back.
Hold on, bro. Because I was there and I seen you do your thing.
Yeah.
I think that's the moment when you were emceeing where I fucking fell in love with you. I found my man crush. Like literally from that point, you made me want to start speaking, like try public speaking. So to think that you were in that position at that point in time just fucking blows my mind. Because you pretty much spawned me wanting to speak and share what it was that I was going through. Obviously at the time I was going through depression as well. And you know, suicidality, I think at that point I'd already attempted. So you know, you gave me a bit of hope, and you made me want to improve myself in that aspect. So thank you. But Jesus, I never would have expected that you were going through something like that.
Yeah, bro. And I really appreciate you being honest about that, because, you know, sometimes we need a catalyst. I was just wearing a mask, brother. That's why you might have seen a different version of what you're hearing now. You know, we all have masks, and often the masks are on for so long that we start believing it, but inside we know they're not real. So after that event, bro, I spent 3 months on the biggest bender of my life. That's when I've never attempted suicide, thankfully. And that was the one and only time I had suicidal thoughts. I called my father, ironically enough, and I just broke down in tears. I was crying for like 3 months, taking drugs, like more than ever before.
Shit.
And between the period of cruise ship to meeting this girl to then, I hadn't experienced much anxiety or depression. I got my shit together. I was focused because I had that dream. I had no time for anything else. I'm going to marry her. I'm going to grow old. I had this in my head. And then for that next 3 months, I almost died through drinking. Like, so I'd have to drink half a bottle of whiskey in 10 minutes to get to sleep because my heart was racing so fast from the drugs. So I'm surprised I didn't die. And I've had liver problems since 16. So they got even worse. My health was really bad. But the first time I had suicidal thoughts, and I called my father and I told him about it, and I remember that feeling. It was the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. Heartbreak. It was so painful. It was this physical thing in my entire chest and in my throat. And it was so painful. And after 3 months, I decided it was enough. And it was actually an Elliot Hulse video on Heartbreak, which I downloaded.
Wow.
And I listened to on repeat on my earphones while I was sleeping, day in and day out. And that was when my perception of life changed, because I realized that this was part of the human experience, this pain.
Yeah.
And I became, it wasn't as simple as this. It took 3 months of pain, but I became very grateful. I started making.
Sorry, brother, you've cut out again.
Yeah. Cut out. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So I started making some changes in my life, and I started learning from this pain. And every day I started journaling. I've got journals, pages full of journals down there to my right of 3 years ago, or however long it was, of what I was feeling. And one day I'd be writing down in my journal, why did she do this? I don't understand. You know, blame, victim. The next day, I'm feeling great today. I'm so grateful. The next day, this is not fair. And it was just this roller coaster of emotion. And I'm so grateful I chronicled that. I still journal to this day. But I was open up to these possibilities of journaling and meditation. And what can I learn from this? And wow, there's like thousands of people going through this, because I felt alone, right?
Yeah.
Depression, personal, you feel like it's only you and it's all because of you. Pervasive, you feel like it's part of every area of your life. And then permanent, you feel like it's never going to end. And as soon as I got out of those three, I was like, fuck, it wasn't permanent. I thought it was. How many other people are going through this right now? And then I realized the answer was fucking millions.
Yeah, bro.
And that was scary, because I don't want anyone else to feel what I felt. That was painful.
And that's the reason why we're doing this podcast, and that's the reason why you're doing what you're doing now with Tonibody, man, is to help people who feel like they're alone and like they have no one to turn to. and like it's going to be forever.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say, bro, is when I started Tonibody and what I do, my goal was to take people's pain away from them and make sure no one experiences what I experienced. And now I realize that is the worst thing I can possibly do, because that pain you're feeling, that depression, that anxiety, that heartbreak, that loss, that grief is going to be the biggest teacher you will have in your life. It's going to be the biggest growth spurt you have in your life. And that may not help right now, but when you look back on it, you will laugh and you will appreciate it so much. You know, the same when you were suicidal, right? You look back and it created the Open Up.
It did.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It created change in the world.
It's powerful, man. There's that story about the kid with the butterfly, with the caterpillar going into the chrysalis, and he's asking his mum, why hasn't it come out as a butterfly yet? And she's like, it has to be in the chrysalis. It has to have resistance to build the strength up to fly. And he's, asking and asking, and then he gets impatient and ends up cutting the chrysalis open. The caterpillar falls out and dies, and he's crying and asking why. And she says, well, it needs to be in there. It needs a challenge so it can grow, so it has the strength to actually fly and become this beautiful big butterfly. And that's what we go through with all these challenges.
Yeah.
So if like you saying that you started Tonibody to take that pain away from them, really, is for chance to learn and grow.
100%, bro. And this is why it's so valuable. We started with childhood, right? One thing that I've learned through my courses and my mentors and teachers, it's very recent, is if we can go back to that child version of me, if I could give the world a superpower, it would be increasing our tolerance for discomfort. If I had a higher tolerance for discomfort as a child and as a teenager, then I would have been able to handle and deal with my problems and learn from them much faster. And I'm grateful that I didn't. But most of us in this day and age have such a low tolerance for discomfort. As soon as something goes wrong, as soon as we feel a little bit low, we resort to cutting, suicide, bullying, all these negative things, because we don't have any other way to deal with what's going on in here.
Exactly.
If we can raise that tolerance, we realize the pain's there for a reason, and it's normal. It's part of our human experience.
Yeah. And I think Julian Pace, the founder of Happiness Co., on his interview, he said, awareness precedes change. And it always does. But even just having that awareness at that age that you can change it would be the catalyst for, a whole shift in this paradigm regarding mental health, bro.
Yeah.
Couple questions I want to ask you about the relationship and the breakup, and then getting in touch with your dad because of the suicidal thoughts. What sort of void do you feel like your partner at that time filled? Did you feel like you weren't enough? Was your identity built around providing for her or giving her love? Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely it was. Again, subconsciously, I didn't think about that. But once that, my purpose was love. That's why I'm here and now I've realized that I'm also here to be me and by myself. But there's a lot of different meanings. I was attached to one meaning. Often that's what happens when we're depressed, is we're so attached to a meaning. Once that thing that's in our life is gone, whether it's a partner or a family member or a dog or whatever, we forget about everything else.
Yeah.
So human beings delete and distort everything and just focus on one.
Sorry, brother, you cut out again.
Sorry, it keeps cutting out. Human beings are very interesting. Of the billions of pieces of information, we delete and distort a lot of it and focus on one thing. And often that focus is not really serving us.
Oh.
There we go. Back.
Yeah,
we're back.
That's it. I got all that anyway.
Yeah. So I definitely felt like I had lost meaning in my life. And at that time, that was a true belief. But it also allowed me to, because remember, I was bullied. I had anxiety. I had depression. I used to punch myself. I used to hate myself.
Yeah.
That was the first probably time in my life that I started loving myself, because I realized I could.
Wow.
So I'm so grateful to her, man. I haven't talked to her in years, but at the time I couldn't understand why she did it. And then I realized you don't need to know why.
Exactly.
You don't need to know why, man.
It's powerful, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
One other question about that time is, why out of all people did you reach out to your father? Like, I'm just asking this because obviously you didn't have the best relationship. He wasn't, as you said, a mentor in your life, a male mentor.
Yeah.
But for anyone out there who's suffering from this, who's going through some sort of depression, heartbreak, and has those suicidal thoughts, what was the thought process behind reaching out to your father?
That's a great question. So even though he didn't really like raise me, I still love him to bits because he does. I know he loves me. He might have not given me the life that I would have wanted, but every single one of us has at least one person in our life that cares about us. If you want to use the word love, use the word love. It doesn't matter where you're at. That is a fact. You know, I care about all of my people who follow my videos, and if any of them needed a chat, I'd be there. So we have this belief when we're in this state that no one understands. And I'm sorry, that's bullshit. That is not true. You know, you might think it's true, but you could just pick up your phone and test it. And then if it's true, you'll just confirm what you thought anyway. So it can't get any worse. There's this belief that we're alone. There's this belief that there's no one there of 7.5 billion people. So I picked up and called him because at the time that was just the best choice, but I could have called a number of people. I was calling my mother, I was calling my friends, I was calling everyone. I'm very fortunate to be a very, as you probably told, a sharing person. So some of us don't have that skill inbuilt. But anyone who is watching, going through those thoughts and who feels alone, you're not. You really aren't. You know, you've got this podcast, you've got me, you've got Lockie, you've got everyone out there, and you've got a phone.
Exactly. Oh. What's going on? Can you hear me?
Hasn't cut out for me, bro.
Oh, yep. I can. You're back.
Yeah, I don't know.
A DJ scratching a disc.
Sorry, bro. I don't know why it keeps doing that.
That's all right, man. I guess what you touched on was like this belief, the belief that no one understands you. For you, in that moment in time, having lost someone that you'd put so much love into, planning a family, wanting to marry this girl, at that point, at your lowest of lows, did you feel like you were unworthy of love or that you couldn't be loved again?
Definitely. I thought it was permanent. I thought, you know, how I started thinking about all the negatives. So it's been 2.5 years, you know, like I've wasted all that time. How will I ever find someone that I can get this close to and trust again? And I did feel for that first 3 months that I would never find love again. That was one of my firm beliefs. Hence, when I got to the depth of that belief, that was the suicidal thought, was the permanency. I truly believed at the time that would never end and that I would never find love again. And for me, that was the ultimate pain.
And if you feel like no one else can love you, then of course you're not going to have love for yourself.
Yes. I also did, though, from the get, because I never tried to get her back. So in my heart of hearts, okay. In my heart of hearts, no matter how much I loved her, I knew the decision was right. And I didn't blame her. I blamed her verbally, like, how could she? But in my heart of hearts, especially through my journaling, I knew that I had to get my shit together.
Yeah.
You know, I knew that I opened my mind. You know, the only reason I was in this situation was because I had a closed mind. And that's not always a good thing. It's not always a bad thing. But I closed my mind and I assumed that she was the one and I didn't open my mind. And when I started healing was when I started opening my mind and asking very powerful questions.
Yeah.
The reason I created Tonibody and the reason I created this version of me was the next partner I have, which is Rosie, who I'm going to marry. She'll never leave me. Not sounding arrogant, but if she was to leave me, then I'd be okay with that because I'm my best version. And when I look back on my ex, I wasn't my best version. I wasn't. You know, I wasn't my best version whatsoever.
Yeah.
So damn straight she left.
And I think you needed to learn that lesson so you could put yourself in a position where now you do have Tonibody, where you can impact the lives of thousands of people, as you said. You know, you needed that. And I'm grateful that you had it.
100%. It's one of the best parts of my life was the most
Oh,
painful
lost you
parts
again.
of my
God
life.
damn
And
it.
this is what I'm saying. One of the best parts of my life was one of the most painful. And I'm so grateful for that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, brother, I got that.
Yes.
Man, that's powerful. I guess we can move on to your recovery, like knowing after everything you've been through, you went through that panic attack, which embedded that emotion, attached that emotion, that sense of fear to that memory, and then caused this anxiety. And then, you finally let go of all those masks, the drugs and alcohol, and find what you believe at that time is your passion or your purpose with personal training. You work hard, do it in 3 months, and then you get on the cruise ship. You find what you perceive as love or what you believe is love at the time. And then later on that falls apart and you go through depression and suicidality, learn your lessons, and then you get to this point now where you're at Tonibody. You covered journaling, meditation, and exercise, I think, as the three that you brought up most. Can you go through each of them for me? Like, what's your process for each of them? How do you go about it? And what do you feel like you've got out of each of them?
Okay. So there's a formula that I'll share with you, and then I'll go into that. So I truly believe there's a formula to happiness. I believe that, and I've seen it. I've seen it time and time again. So we have, first of all, it starts with when you wake up. When you wake up, you start fresh. Every single day, no matter how depressed, stressed, anxious, grief, whatever you were, you wake up and you start fresh. It's a brand new day. It's a brand new you. It's a brand new life. So wake up at the same time every day. That's awake. Move your body as soon as you wake up. Peace through breath. Okay? Every single one of us doesn't breathe properly. Guided meditation, right? Love through gratitude. And then eat to cleanse. So what you put in your body. So AMPLE, that gives you ample time. Okay? The journaling is part of that. So peace through breath, love through gratitude. You write down 3 things you're grateful for. That's a 5-minute routine you do every morning, right? If you do that every morning, you've already won the morning. Doesn't matter how shit your day is. Doesn't matter what challenges come your way, okay? Then on top of that, layering it with things like movement, journaling, nature. Journaling is so powerful because we have 70 to 90,000 thoughts per day. Now, who knows what number is true or not? Everyone throws numbers out there. I could have made those up. Let's say it's 10,000 thoughts a day. How do we decide which thoughts we pay attention to and which thoughts we don't?
Yeah.
If you paid attention to every single thought you had, we wouldn't be talking right now. You'd be in jail because you would have killed someone by now, right? So that by definition means that you can actually control your thoughts because you don't pay attention to some of them. So when you journal, you take that thought, which we believe to be true, we put it down and we go, okay, it's no longer in here. Let's look at that. And we write it down. And I've got some crazy shit in my journal. And then it just becomes a matter of, okay, that's what I'm thinking. How could that not be true? Or how could I learn from that? Or how could this be different? This is what I do when I'm anxious. I still get anxious, but I write it down. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I did before. I think I'm going to drop dead. What else could this mean?
Yeah.
And I've taken it out of here and I've just done some self-counseling. So powerful.
It is, bro. Yeah. And 100%. When I feel like, well, I don't need more because I'm content with who I am and where I'm going. But when I used to feel like a piece of shit, I'd write in my journal what I was thinking. And usually it'd be like, fuck, you suck, man. You're a piece of shit. You're not worthy. Like, you should just cut an X across your chest or some shit like that. I'd write it down. And as soon as I write it down and read it out loud, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
Yep.
Like, fucking, you deserve more than this. And then I'll put my journal down and be like, oh, okay, sweet. Move on to the next. Like, you just need to get it out.
Bro, do you know what's so interesting is when we are depressed or anxious, the reason it's so painful is because we feel like we can't control it, correct? If we knew we could control anxiety and depression, it would lose all its weight. Now, think about this for a second. You've got a thought that's hurting you. You take that thought and you put it on paper. That is tangible proof that you can control your thoughts because you've moved the thought from your mind into a physical plane that's outside of you.
Yeah.
That alone, when you understand this concept, this is what you've done. You've written down that you're useless. You read it, you're like, what the
find space.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super powerful, man. I've never heard it put that way. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. And
Thank
that's
you.
exactly what meditation is, I think, in the Oxford Dictionary. It's like focusing on one thing. So if you can focus on one thing, you can choose not to focus on any of the other 50,000 plus thoughts you have per day.
Exactly. Like, and which ones do you choose to focus on? It's a choice. It's a superpower of choice. A lot of us just haven't built that skill up yet. It's like learning how to walk, right? People say I suck or I'm a pessimist. No, you don't suck. You're not a pessimist. You just haven't built the skill set yet to be more positive.
Exactly. And how have you gone about building that skill set?
Repetition. You know, I think there's this belief around the world that motivated people or happy people or successful people feel great all the time. That's not true. Myself, you, Tony Robbins, I mean, putting us in that category, but
Thanks,
do you know what I mean? Like, that all of the people who we perceive to be successful, they get stressed, they get demotivated, they get depressed, and instead of listening to the voice, they do it anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't want to do shit half the time, but I do it anyway. And that is a muscle. That is a skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And then the most important thing, when you don't do it and you know that you're not doing it, it's a choice. Love is the absence of judgment. You remove the judgment from the situation, the judgment of yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to feel shitty sometimes, go for it. Like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with feeling a little bit low? The problem is when you feel low or depressed or anxious, and then you judge yourself for feeling low or depressed or anxious, and you start doing this.
Exactly. And I think that's the point where you can get to when you become aware that you can change it. Sometimes you're going to judge yourself for feeling low because you know you can change it, but you're not taking action to do so. So I think that's really powerful. That's probably one of the most powerful takeaways from this so far, is the fucking give yourself love rather than judging.
Yeah. Like, just say that mantra, man. That was another light bulb. Shout out to Jesse Wynyard. He's one of my good mates, online coach, does what we do.
He's another beautiful man.
Beautiful dude. You got to get him on here, man. And he said that to me one day. Love is the absence of judgment. And bro, that changed my life. There were so many areas where I was judging Rosie, my partner, not intentionally, judging myself, judging my clients. Love is the absence of judgment. And every time I feel myself judging right now, I say that out loud, and it's powerful. Yeah.
That's awesome, my man. I've got a few questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Sweet.
How are you going for time? You right?
It's all good, bro. I push my team back.
Sweet. What would you say the quality of your life is like now?
Amazing. So I still get stressed. I still allow myself to get stressed often, especially the last few weeks. I want my company and my movement to grow faster. I want to help more people. And even though we're doing better than ever before, I don't feel like it's good enough. And then I have to pull myself back.
Yeah.
But I live in Bondi with my beautiful dog and my future wife. I've got enough for organic food and I'm healthy. If you think about it, like, remove the organic food, remove the partner, just if you've got a roof and food, we're doing better than 95% of the world. And I have to, even in my position, remind myself of that, because judgment is instilled in me.
Yeah.
So the quality of my life is amazing, and it could very easily, without any circumstances changing, be a terrible quality. Again, that's my perception.
Yeah, that's awesome, bro. What have you added to your life or removed from it to improve the quality of it?
Removing drugs and alcohol. I actually was 8 weeks sober up until yesterday. I had 3 beers. It was actually really pleasant.
Yeah.
Removing vices that I need. So that was very dangerous for me, is things that I need, even things like exercise.
Okay.
This need. Same as, like, if I woke up and didn't do my morning routine 6 months ago, that would throw me off. Had to change that. So removing my needs. Secondly, removing negative and toxic people from my life. And thirdly, removing judgment from every area of my life, which is something I'm constantly.
That is hard, man.
Yeah, constantly working on that. Yeah.
That's cool. What are you most grateful for right now?
love. The love of my clients who put the work in, the love of people like you, the infinite potential of love in the world through social media, through pain, just the infinite potential we have through love.
That's fucking sick, bro. Those 2 words, infinite potential. I guess we've covered pretty much everything, but one last question for you. If you had the chance to put a message on a billboard somewhere in Sydney there where you know thousands of people would see it every day, what would that be?
That's a tough one, bro. That is a very tough one. I suppose it would be love is the absence of judgment, but people wouldn't quite understand that. It would probably just be gratitude, man. I mean, people talk about it all the time. It's one of the most talked about topics in self-help and mental health, but we do glance over it a lot. Just what am I grateful for? You know, What is good in life? Because Tony Robbins says it all the time. It's so powerful. If you give your brain a question, it will find an answer. So if you ask a good question, you'll get a good answer. What is good in life? What am I grateful for? What can I smile about? Any variation of that will help people. And if you ask that daily, you'll slowly start to turn things around.
God damn it, man. Providing the bombs. I guess to wrap up, bro, I just want to acknowledge you for making the time to do this. Like, we've been for a while. This first video, Skype or Zoom interview for the Open Up podcast. I thank so much for being the number one. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing in the space, knowing what you've been through. And then lastly, this is selfish, but thanks for inspiring me to, go down this route of wanting to speak and share my message, bro. Thank you. I've looked up to you for a long time, and it's a pleasure to do this with you, my man.
Thank you, bro. I love you to bits, brother. And and ultimately, everyone listening, like, this is so powerful because we understand. Like, we understand where you're at, and we know, and you're not alone. And who knows, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, you could be sitting here helping others through the pain that you've experienced. That's really cool.
Exactly,
so cherish
man.
it. Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, bro. I love you, man.
Love you too. Peace out.
Shit.